Hi, my name is Chad Alice Hagen, and I've been a guest artist with the Voorhees Family Art Show since the very beginning. I'm a felt artist, a resist dyer, and a bookbinder, and since all three of those career choices are a bit strange, I'll start out this interview by showing a few images of what they are, okay? Hey, this is wool, merino wool from Australia. I used to use this because you can just take this, lay it down, and then felt it. That's how I used to work. But now I use this called pre-felt. It's the same Australian merino wool, very fine, but it's not felted. You can just pull it off. And both of these methods need to have warm soapy water and agitation to make them into a strong felt. A strong felt is like this. Ding! This is very strong, and this is what we need both for making scarves, lovely scarves. Now keep me nice and warm up here. Other types of scarves. And resist dyeing, the second of my many careers. Resist dyeing means we take this strong felt, we fold it, and we put wonderful clamps on it that I have down in the basement, clamp them down, and then they go into hot water dye baths at probably boiling water. And so once they're in there 45 minutes, we take them out, reclamp them with different tools, put them back in a different color, and keep going about 4 or 5 times. And so what you get is beautiful over dyeing and all these wonderful shapes on resist dye felt. Isn't it gorgeous? And what do I do with that? Ha! I make a book, a felt book, felt covered book. And so there we go from felt maker, resist dyeing to bookbinder. All right. So to start this whole thing, I never really thought of myself as an artist. And when I was growing up, I never knew anyone who made art. My mother said that I should be a social worker because I taught my brother how to tie his shoes. But no, I started college as an art student in the late 60s. I soon dropped out and became a hippie, spending my time trying to learn all the craft skills I could just in case I needed to join a commune. I learned to throw pots, make quilts, weave colorful guitar straps, make bread at Whole Food bakeries, help start food co-ops, and even farmed a bit at the Blue River Starship. But in general, wandered about. But wandering can be useful. It was when I was working as a migrant apple picker, had one of those, in the Chelan River Valley in Washington State that I discovered a life-changing path. I was bored from picking apples and falling off ladders, so I visited a friend who was at Evergreen College. One day I wandered through the art building and discovered a whole room full of weaving looms. I was amazed at the sight of all those strings wrapped around the looms, and my first thought really was, I really want to learn how to control all those threads. So I stood there in that hall and I mentally planned out my next decade. I could finish my college degree in 4 years, 2 years actually, and teach weaving and sell rugs for the rest of my life. And I did just about that. I re-entered the University of Wisconsin at Madison in the home ec department because that was the only place on campus that I could learn to weave. And as soon as I finished my degree and was weaving a fair amount of rugs, I learned that I needed a graduate degree to actually teach. So I started my master's degree in textile history at the same home ec department, and then a second life-changing direction appeared because I learned about felt making. And although it was pretty basic, I was told to make the felt by just throwing this bad trashy wool in the bathtub while taking a shower. Somehow I was hooked. And that was about 1983. There wasn't much written about handmade felt. I continued to weave my rug, but my interest was in learning all I could about felt making. During my second year as a master's program, I got a scholarship to take a workshop with felt maker Lane Goldsmith at Aeromont School of Crafts in Tennessee, and I was a sponge. I learned that felt making and dyeing with good quality wool could result in a controlled art form and not just happy hands at home. Before I got back on the plane to Madison, I knew what I would be felting and how I would be dyeing for my upcoming grad school. I presented 10 3 by 2 foot framed felt kimonos for that show. A friend wrote an article for Fiber Arts magazine in 1986, and I got the cover. On the strength of that show, I applied and was accepted for the MFA program at the Cranbrook Academy of Art in Michigan, my goodness, where I ran into hard questions about art from my mentor, Gerhard Nodell. I finished the program, and ever mindful of my goal to teach at a college, I settled in Minnesota so I could easily move from one coast to the other whenever I got my teaching job, which I never did. So stuck in St. Paul, I had a studio in an old shoe factory which was really haunted. But I kept working on the felt and started to teach classes in weaving and indigo resist dyeing, which is a process much like I work now in clamping or tying the fabric before dyeing. And I taught this at the university in St. Paul. But in 1990, recommended by Gerhard Nodell, I was given a Fulbright to teach in New Zealand for 5 months. I had extra time off to work, so I started using those resist dyeing processes on my wool felt, and this became another life-changing direction. Returning to St. Paul, I was so excited about the resist dyeing that I worked almost night and day, resulting in a show with Mary Hark at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, which produced yet another article and magazine cover from On Surface Design in 1994. In 95, I taught at the Penland School in North Carolina, and although I don't remember them, David Voorhees met Molly Sharp there at the very same time. I was so thrilled with being in the North Carolina mountains that I moved to Asheville, meeting Jane Voorhees when I applied for a job at Malaprop's bookstore, where she was the manager. My studio in Asheville was in an old cotton mill on the river with enough room to live and work. My felt started to get smaller and incorporated small stones and bits of metal. At that time, the magazine Shuttle, Spindle, and Dye Pot featured the new work in 2001. By then I was teaching felting, resist dyeing at workshops and craft schools all over the States, in Europe and Australia, which was really a lot more fun than teaching weaving at a college. Lark Books, which was then based in Asheville, asked me to write a felting book. And although I didn't really know about doing that, I ended up writing 3 books for them. Here's one on various aspects of felting, and I thought writing was going to be my next life-changing direction, but it turned out that writing books led me to making books. In 2006, I took my first bookmaking class along with Jane and Susie Voorhees, taught by Annie Fain Leiden. I could already see that the resist felts I had been making for years would be the perfect material for book covers. I took classes with Dan Essick, a famous, fabulous bookbinder, met local bookbinders, and hunkered down in my studio, making every single new book I learned over and over again, using felt as the cover. By 2009, I was teaching a combination of resist dyeing, felting scarves, and simple bookmaking. So after so many years of making stuff, it seems that all my life-changing directions have brought me to my little cottage in West Asheville with a felting and resist dyeing wet studio in the basement and a dry studio upstairs where I make my useful books. So thank you very much. This has been like the 19th time I've tried this. Visit my Etsy shop at chadalicehagen.etsy.com and check out new work on my Instagram, Chad Alice Hagen. Thank you.